Hello once again, welcome to our GEOCAMP series on fluvial systems and channel fields. This episode will focus on channel correlation in well logs. Now let's imagine a simple scenario. Let's say at time T1 we have an underlying muddy substrate, followed by a first episode of meandering channel deposits coming in, and then a period of non-deposition, more dominantly erosive mud overlying the underlying meandering system. And then with slight shift in the feeder position, we have another episode of meandering system coming in. And then the process repeats itself up to time T6, where we have a lower sinuosity, channel system more to the north with a splay at the end, at the basal part of it, that takes the shape of a distributive lobe. And the thing is, let's imagine that we have 5 wells in this area. One will see that these wells are really close to each other, especially well 3 and 4. But one thing I'd like you to note is that, first of all, the number of spikes or the number of sand indicators, at least in the gamma ray log for each well, is different. Well 1 has 3, and then 2 in well 2. There is none in well 4, and then 2 in well 5. Another thing to note again is that even though we have well 2 and 3 are really close, you observe that if you were to ignore the 3D architecture of these sands and the fact that they may be different genetically, the easier thing to do is to go from here and correlate this one and correlate that all the way to that other one. But in reality, these are different individuals, considering our knowledge of this sequence. Now, if you also consider well 3 and 4, you see that although they're very close, well 3 saw an indicator of sand there, one of the channel complex, but in well 4 there is none, and then we have 2 in well 5. That can be really confusing, especially where you have wells that are really close. So if we attempt to correlation here, this is what it's going to probably show. If we're going from the well location, at least in well 1, we have this distributive, candidates, which is kind of actually a splay. And then you see between well 3 and 4, although we have the sand present here, it's missing in this other well. And then we have what we see in well 5. So this is telling us telling us a lot actually. We have to keep in mind that these log motifs are really not so reliable. We have to keep in mind we have to ask the question of what are these sands doing in the big sense, especially are they distributive, are they meandering, or are they low sinuosity straight fields, because that will help us in deciding or really understanding how we correlate to one signature to the other for 2 wells that are really close. Now let's imagine that we have another, a bit of another cycle of this deposit mud coming in at T7 and a more recent distributive lobe complex at time T8. Let's assume that let's say in this area the slope became a little more stabilized and we have more distributive type deposit. Now the correlation changes because in this very case we have because these wells are actually along the fairway of this new deposit. What we see is that we're going to see this signature in all the wells. Okay, that again means that we're going to have sand presence across all the wells for that interval. But for the deeper ones, it's not going to be the same. So the new correlation will take a look like this. Will look like this. So we're going to be having because for this very the more recent, the younger complex, the line is taken along the fairway or along the flow direction. We're going to be seeing sands in all wells. But for the older the underlying channel complexes, we see different representations as we go from one well to the other. Why? Because these wells these channel complexes sometimes are meandering. Sometimes we have a well in the axis of one of them, and the nearby well is actually in the overbank of, or in the overbank area between 2 channel complexes. and if we put a well there, we're going to miss it. So what are the messages here? First of all, log motifs as we know them, gamma ray or SP logs, can be really subjective. So we don't go correlating one to the other because they look similar in shape or about the same elevation, because we have to keep in mind that these are just signatures telling us there's gamma ray readings of this amount, but it doesn't tell us that these sands are genetically the same. Secondly, we also have to keep in mind the direction along which our correlation or our wells are placed. The question you want to ask is it along the strike, or is it across the strike, which is along the dip? Because for a meandering system, you can very easily go from one well that have a lot of sand to another well that has nothing, because one well will be on the axis and the other well, for example, well 3 and 4, one will be on the axis of, let's say, the oldest meandering system, while well 4 is actually in an area that is really considered overbank, that doesn't really have any sand presence. Another thing to keep in mind is, again, you want to ask the question, are these channels really continuous? What happened? What is the history of this area? Was there any form of erosion, in the past that could make one channel complex not continue to the next location? Are these pinching out? What is the structural history in this area? What is the time in between the structure and when this channel complex was deposited? It's going to help you decide or figure out whether the sand is going to make it to a particular location or not. Are these systems meandering, or what's the sinuosity? Are they distributive? Are they meandering? Are they low sinuosity, straight channels? An idea, a picture of these different elements will help you in making informed decision in correlating one log signature to the other for your wells. The summary is that you have to keep, you really have to think in 3D. You have to imagine that these are 3D elements. So looking at them in a well location that is more like a 1D, and then from one well to another, really will be insufficient. So you have to really understand the key history of the area. What type of channel complex am I looking at? What's the sinuosity? What's the history with the structure in that area? And if you put everything together, it's going to help you really making the best decision in correlating from one well to the other. Okay. All right. So that's all I have for this very episode. Thanks for your time. Please do not hesitate to follow us on YouTube. So we'd like you to subscribe. Also check us out on Facebook. And you can also send an email if you have questions, and share your ideas on Facebook. We'd like to get a discussion started, and let's keep sharing.